on your left. So in anticipation, and yeah, I guess we can call it anticipation for Captain America Brave New World, I thought it would be fun to revisit what I think is probably the best MCU film, but also to the best Captain America film, Captain America The Winter Soldier. This movie as like an action political thriller is great. It's really entertaining, the action sequences are really good. Though, a bit of inside baseball here. Normally when I do movie commentary, I also watch the film beforehand and take notes. And bear in mind, it's been a few years since I've rewatched this film. There are some things in this film that don't hold up for me from a technical perspective, mainly from the editing and the cinematography. It's mostly to do with action stuff, and seeing as how this film is an action film, that's kind of a big point of it, and we'll talk about it when we get into the film. There are certain moments in the action scenes where I'm like, okay, the cinematography is kind of hindering this. Like, the handheld camera is not like obscene, horrible Taken 3 style shaky cam, but it is a little bit overdone. But we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the film. But also too, I just want to say, just because I have some like issues with it, this film is great. And there are also some things in this film that haven't aged particularly well within the MCU timeline, and that's mainly because of future MCU installments. Like, the stuff they do with Nick Fury after this film, look how I massacred my boy. And that's the thing about this film, is that it's so wonderfully well written. Like, everything is so tight and the themes are so solid. Like, this whole movie is about freedom versus security, but also the idea that freedom and security is represented by Captain America. He is the embodiment of both. It was really taking a stance about global security and how we can in many ways go too far with it, but also too that the people in charge of the bodies of, you know, government, the organizations in charge, don't always look out for the people. Like, the writing in this movie is genuinely fantastic. But before we get into the commentary, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media. It's all linked down in the description. I'm also an actor and filmmaker myself, so check out my latest short film, The Shining Optimism of VFMNR. Also, if you're a fantasy lover like myself, please check out the Indiegogo link in the description for my upcoming fantasy short film, The Singer's Tale. Any contribution, big or small, is greatly appreciated. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into Captain America The Winter Soldier. On your left. Dun, 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 dun. I miss this logo so much. Like, I think the new Marvel Studios logo is so self-indulgent. It's so long, it's so like self-congratulatory, and also too, the music is kind of annoying. Maybe I'm being a bit hyperbolic, but like genuinely, it's really annoying to me. Also, maybe too, it's just the overexposure to the new logo, because like every episode of every Disney Plus show has the new MCU logo playing over it, but like, it's so self-congratulatory, so like self-masturbatory. I don't like it. I miss this logo. Like, take me back.
On your left. On my left. Got it.
This scene is so great. Like, not only is it a wonderful introduction to Sam Wilson, the character, but also too, it establishes a really wonderful friendship and connection between Sam and Steve so instantly. Like, it's so realistic too. It is one of those things where, like, say for example, you go to like a gym and you meet some guy and then you just start talking and then you kind of go, wait, now this guy's really cool. That's what this scene is, and I love the overall vibe of this scene. Also too, I love the inclusion of the leitmotif for the old Captain America theme, Alan Silvestri's Captain America theme, because in my eyes, this is something that the MCU isn't great at, which is sticking to leitmotifs. Alan Silvestri's Captain America theme is incredible, and I do think that it is one of the best superhero themes created. And it's a shame that after the first Captain America film, it doesn't really exist. Like, it shows up in this film and in Endgame. Like, don't get me wrong, I do like the score for this film. I think Henry Jackman creates a really cool, interesting leitmotif for Captain America in this film. It's a more like modern espionage thriller type of sound. You know, it's all like do 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 do. I love that, that's cool. And his work in Civil War, where he kind of like blends the Alan Silvestri Captain America theme with the Winter Soldier do-do-do-do-do, and creates this new modern Captain America theme in Civil War, the ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba, which is kind of like a blend of like the Avengers and the Winter Soldier theme, the Taking a Stand theme. But yeah, this is a really long-winded way of me saying I like Alan Silvestri's Captain America theme, and I like that the film pays homage to it, and I wish it was in it a little bit more. Like, that is something the MCU is quite bad at, is at sticking to melodies and leitmotifs. Like, really, you could have done something with the score in this film where, like, Captain America adopts the Taking a Stand theme, but then when he puts on the classic First Avenger suit, it becomes more First Avenger-y, where it's all like, da 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 da. I don't know, I feel like that is one of the weaknesses of the MCU, is that they don't really, like, pay attention to the storytelling with the music a lot of the time.
Guess I got a late start.
Really? You should be ashamed of yourself. You should take another lap. Did you just take it? I assume you just took it.
Look, Anthony Mackie is so damn charismatic, and you instantly like Sam. Like, genuinely, he's so good in this. I love Steve Rogers' little notebook where he has all these like things he's missed for the past 100 years. I think that's so fun. And a detail that I think is so cool, and I wish more movies did this, is that in every country, the list is different. Like, that's so cool. I wish more movies did this.
Hey, fellas. Either one of you know where the Smithsonian is? I'm here to pick up a fossil.
Right, okay, I'm gonna say this, right? And do not take this the wrong way. I am a young, heterosexual man, okay? And what I say now, please do not take this as me devaluing Scarlett Johansson as an actor, because she is fantastic. And also, don't take this as me devaluing the character of Black Widow, because what they do with her in this film is so interesting. Like, she thought she was trading in her time in the Red Room and working for the KGB by, you know, becoming a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and then working for S.H.I.E.L.D., thinking that she was being a good person, but then she finds that S.H.I.E.L.D. was actually Hydra the whole time, and it kind of like flips a whole worldview. Her bond with Steve is so fascinating and interesting. But that being said, Scarlett Johansson is fucking hot in this film. And the film is so classy about it too. Like, there's no like lingering butt shots, which is also a thing in Black Widow, which I thought was weird. Like, I thought the whole point was that, like, oh, Hollywood is not supposed to be devaluing women and over-sexualizing them. But in her own solo Black Widow film, directed by a woman, there's a lingering butt shot. But there is such a class and elegance to Black Widow in this film. Like, she's hot, and the film knows that she's hot, but it doesn't overly sexualize her. Also, too, I love the straight red hair. Like, it's just so... goddamn. And yes, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but the bond between her and Steve in this film is so good. Like, they are work husband, work wife, but also too, they're more than just lovers. Like, they're not lovers, they're like beyond that. They're like friends, but they're also like soulmatey. It's so good. Genuinely, I love their bond.
Too busy!
Was he wearing a parachute?
No. No, he wasn't.
One of the things that this movie does better than, say, The First Avenger, which I do like, but the thing I have with Captain America The First Avenger is that I think that film falls apart after Bucky goes, let's hear it for Captain America. Like, the last third of that film isn't great. And in The First Avengers, Captain America is, like, cool-ish, but, like, that costume is so goofy. But one of the things that this film does is that it makes Captain America cool. Like, don't get me wrong, in his previous two appearances in The First Avenger and Avengers 1, Captain America is cool. I like the character of Steve Rogers. He is one of my favorite MCU characters. But I wouldn't say that he's cool. This film makes Captain America cool. Like, the stealth costume mixed with his new, like, modern combat style, and, like, him jumping out of the plane with that parachute, like, he's just cool. And the stealth mission on the Lumerian Star is just cool. Like, he's just running through the ship, kicking people off the edge of the ship, knocking people out. Doing this like crazy cool parkour stuff, it's just visually, it's so cool. It's like a massive upgrade compared to the previous film. And I kind of love that this more gritty choreography kind of implies that Steve Rogers has been training, and by training with new modern technologies, his fighting style has changed. Like, his more brutal and gritty fighting style, I can assume that he learned from S.H.I.E.L.D, which is really cool. Subtle storytelling. Like, this movie has layers. I love that. And I miss that about the MCU. Like, again, this scene is just so cool. He's just running and it's all like do 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 do. Henry Jackman's score is really cool. The Taking a Stand theme is awesome.
What about the nurse that lives across the hall from you? She seems kind of nice.
Secure the engine room, then find me a date.
And like I said, the banter between Cap and Black Widow is so much fun. Again, they have this whole like work husband, work wife type of relationship. And it like grows and develops throughout the films to where like they're not like brother and sister, but it's like they're more than friends. Like, their relationship in this film and in Civil War is really nice and tender. God, Captain America versus Batroc the Leaper is so cool. I love when Cap fights Batroc. Batroc's like, oh, I thought you're more than just the man with a shield. And he takes off the shield, he takes off his helmet, and he fights Batroc on equal terms. That's so cool. There's so much character stuff done with just simple action.
On va voir.
Immediately it shows that one, Steve Rogers is confident in his own abilities, but two, he's also an honorable man. He will fight Batroc on his own terms. Also, a cool detail about Batroc the Leaper is that his costume is just a more tactical version of his colors from the comic books. Like, that's really cool.
Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
I hate Captain Marvel so much now. Like, genuinely, every time I see this scene, I think that line is so cold, so hard. Then I remember Captain Marvel and how it just completely devalues that whole moment to a stupid joke, and I hate it. Like, genuine. This is so cool in this movie. Nick Fury is so cool in this movie, and the MCU butcher him after this film. Like, really, they ruined all the mystery, all the pathos, all the history for a shitty joke. Why?
No, Granddad worked in a nice building. Got good tips. He'd walk home every night, a roll of one stuffed in his lunch bag. He'd say hi. People would say hi back.
You know, one of the things writing-wise I like about this film is the idea of all these, like, thematically rich stories Nick Fury tells Captain America. I love this whole lunch bag story he tells about his grandfather to Steve. It really just embodies the whole theme of freedom versus protection, and the idea that, you know, Fury's granddad loved people, but also at the same time too, he couldn't trust them. And so for his own protection, he carried a gun in a lunch bag. But also, I think the brilliance about Nick Fury in this film is that a lot of the time, you can't tell if he's telling the truth. Like, for all we know, he's making up this story.
This isn't freedom. This is fear.
S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be.
And again, going back to the idea of freedom versus security, Captain America embodies both, but also too, that is the theme of the film, and also it is symbolized by the helicarriers.
Bucky Barnes and Stephen Rogers were inseparable on both schoolyard and battlefield.
You know, you could say that this might be a little heavy-handed to go, oh hey look, Bucky's important, but I think it works for the film. Like, yes, I don't know why Cap is going to his own Smithsonian exhibit to, you know, just read his own history or relive his own history, I guess. But, you know, for the sake of the audience needing to catch up with the whole backstory of Bucky, just in case you didn't watch the first one, it works. Like, that was something that the MCU was quite good at, was that you didn't have to watch every MCU film to get the story.
I have lived a life. My only regret is that you didn't get to live yours.
So, in case you couldn't tell, the old age makeup on Hayley Atwell as Peggy Carter, that's CGI, and it's so damn good. However, the effect is ruined on me because if you look at her eyes and her lips, you can tell it's CGI. But the actual texture work on the visual effect is really impressive. Like, that is so good. For years, I was fooled by it. I thought it was all makeup, but it's CGI. And it looks really good. Also, this scene is just heartbreaking. Like, Steve is alive, Peggy's alive, but she's so much older than him now. Like, she is now the age he should be if he actually didn't go into the ice. And just, you know, their love is so strong that he sees her, like, every day, every other day. But, like, she's deteriorating mentally, and that's so heartbreaking to watch. Like, I think the Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter romance in the MCU, although it gets a bit icky with Endgame, it's really strong. It's really well done. And the tragedy of it in this film in particular is so heartbreaking. And the moment that really breaks my heart is the moment where she has an episode and then just goes, Steve, you're alive. Oh, it's so good.
Like, how the hell did a French pirate manage to hijack a covert S.H.I.E.L.D. vessel in broad daylight?
For the record, Councilman, he's Algerian.
1, 2, 3, viva l'Algérie! Don't know if that's the representation I should be celebrating. Just in case you didn't know, I'm half Algerian, so that's why I made that reference. One of the things that the film I wish would explore a little bit more is the relationship between Robert Redford's director Pierce, and his relationship with Nick Fury, because the stuff they talk about in this film is interesting. I think overall Robert Redford is great in this movie, and I think overall his character works in this movie. I just wish there was a little bit more explored between him and Nick Fury. Not saying that maybe we needed flashbacks of the two of them working together, but like, their relationship sounds interesting. Like, why does Nick Fury look up to this man and trust him so much?
You gotta get Iron Man to stop by my niece's birthday party.
The MCU references in this film are really tastefully done. It's like, oh yeah, they'll mention Stark's name, or they'll be like, oh, you gotta get Iron Man to fly over to my daughter's birthday party. That works. It's really naturalistic in the way it's executed. Like, this was a time where the MCU actually felt like a shared, interconnected universe, and not just like random side stories happening here and there, and then, oh yeah, we all like meet together in like one big crossover event. Like, everything in this movie and the movies surrounding it at the time did feel important. Even in lesser movies like Thor: The Dark World, the story itself, whilst it wasn't important, things going on in the film were important. And I feel like that's something that the later MCU films lost.
Want to see my lease?
The car chase with Nick Fury is so cool. Like, everything about it just feels so, like, spy thrillery. It's very grounded, it's very gritty, but also, too, there is, like, heightened things like the machine gun in the car.
Now!
Like, the tone of this movie is just awesome. This gritty, grounded spy thriller, but also, too, it's heightened. You know, if you told me that this was in the same universe as the Mission Impossible films, I would believe you to a point. Like, the Russo brothers wanted to capture a tone, and I think they did so wonderfully. And speaking of the Russo brothers, this is their best film by, like, a country mile. Not even talking about their Marvel stuff, because outside of their Marvel stuff, their work hasn't been great. Like, The Gray Man? Did not like that movie. They did something else, though. I don't remember, but this is still their best film.
Well, what's not damaged? Air conditioning is fully operational.
That's a good joke. This was back in the day when, like, the MCU humor, it wasn't forced. There was, like, subtlety to their jokes. Like, I wish we could go back to this. Not just Marvel, but DC too. I'm sick and tired now of superhero films just being big and silly and goofy and, we're gonna do, like, wacky, crazy things. No. Go back to this type of intelligent writing. Like, you can have jokes. I'm not against jokes. Just have them work within your story. Don't have them take away from the tension of your story. But also, too, just make sure they're well written, because when you think about this joke, it's hilarious. He's in a car full of this crazy tech, and the only thing that is working is the air conditioning. That's hilarious. Okay, so like a dumb fan theory thing is that this yellow truck that crashes into one of the cars is apparently driven by the Punisher or something. I don't know. It's pretty dumb when you think about it. Like, what would Frank Castle be doing here? Why would he be intercepting this car chase? Like, it doesn't make any sense. The introduction to the Winter Soldier in this film is so cool. Like, the filmmaking, that rack focus to show the Winter Soldier, to reveal him, incredible. Like, he's just standing there eerily in the middle of the street and then shoots the mine of the car and it blows up. Incredible. It's so good. Apparently Nick Fury's laser cutter is a reference to him playing Mace Windu and it's meant to be like his lightsaber. That's pretty cool. You know what, I feel like I'm kind of like harping on the old versus the new MCU, but like, if this was the new MCU, they would fully just reference the fact that he played Mace Windu, and there's no subtlety to the writing in most new MCU stuff. Like, I love the fact that it's literally just he's using his little gadget, but it's a reference to a lightsaber. That's subtle. That's cool. But I just know for a fact that if this scene was in a new MCU film, they'd be like, whoa, holy Star Wars, whoa, you look like a Jedi or something. It'd be so, like, on the nose and just so goofy. Like, the movie itself would just stop and they draw attention to the fact of, oh, hey, wow, you know what? You look like Ms. Windu. No, I hate that.
Well, I'll keep my distance.
Hopefully not too far.
Do you know what? Although Endgame makes this very weird, I do kind of like this, like, little crush Steve has on Sharon Carter in this film. Like, throughout this film, before he finds out that she's Sharon Carter and Peggy's niece, I don't know, I kind of like the two of them together in this film. It's mainly Endgame that makes their relationship just icky and weird, but, like, in this film, I like them together.
My wife kicked me out.
Didn't know you were married.
A lot of things you don't know about me.
See, this is what I mean about Nick Fury in this film. He's so interesting. He's so cool. You can't tell if what he's saying is the truth. But also, too, the coolness of this scene is that him and Steve are having a conversation, but they're also having, like, two conversations at once because Fury is showing him, like, oh, we're being listened to. S.H.I.E.L.D. is compromised, etc., etc. Like, that's so cool. I love the writing for this. I love the air of mystery and intrigue surrounding Nick Fury and just, man, just this movie is so good, and I hate what happens to him later on. I know I keep harping on that they ruin him later on and stuff, but like, because this movie is so good, obviously this is part of like a large interconnected spanning story. It's kind of hard when you go back and look at something like this to just remember, oh yeah, but also in the future, this is gonna happen. The events of like Secret Invasion and, oh, do you remember Captain Marvel? Ruins it. I know I'm harping on about it too much, but like, kind of the problem of when you have like a massive, long, sprawling, interconnected story. But for now, just focusing on this film, this scene is great, and I love Nick Fury in this film.
Tell him I'm in pursuit.
And going back to the point I made earlier about how this film makes Captain America cool, him pursuing the Winter Soldier, just running through these buildings, just like, you know, crashing through windows and like running into the wall. It's so cool. This film like really like increases the believability of Captain America. Like, one of my favorite details is how he's running so fast that he accidentally bumps into one of the walls and then just keeps on running. It's so good. It's just so cool. I'm just chills. Awesome. This movie is so cool.
He's fast, strong. Had a metal arm.
There's so much source in this film, so much just believability, and also too, there's like gravitas to it. Like Steve's delivery of that one line of strong, fast, had a metal arm. There's something about it where it just builds up the Winter Soldier. Like, just that very vague description just gives the Winter Soldier so much aura, so much mystery. It's so cool. Like, that's simple writing, but it's so effective. You know, I may or may not have mentioned it, but Captain America's stealth suit is so cool. It's a nice reference to a suit he wears in the comic books, but also too, just visually. So much source, so much aura. It's so sleek and cool, and I like how this is the suit that becomes like the foundation for his suits in the future of the MCU films. Although if I was to be a little bit nitpicky about his suits in the later MCU films, I wish they just used a bit more of a brighter blue. Not too much, just a little bit. Also too, whilst I think the Endgame suit is the best Captain America suit, I wish they included the white on the sleeves like in the Age of Ultron costume.
Why was he there? He told me not to trust anyone.
One of the things I really like about this scene between Steve and director Pierce is how Pierce the whole time is trying to manipulate Steve into exposing what Fury said to him. Like, the whole time he's just subtly interrogating Steve, and it's so subtle, but Steve isn't dumb, and he's just telling him both the truth, but also too, he's like dancing around the truth. He's choosing his words carefully, and I love that, because it shows that Steve Rogers is smart. Like, I don't think he's taking Fury's words too hard, but also at the same time too, he's not being, like, naive. He's just going, okay, something's going wrong. Fury was killed for a reason. Pierce is trying to figure out what's going on, but there's something about him that I don't trust, so I'm gonna tell him what I know, but not exactly what I know. Like, the writing for this scene is so cool, and the way Chris Evans plays it, and the way Robert Redford plays it, it's so good, because in many ways, you want to believe Pierce. You see him, the way he's behaving, he's charismatic, he's a cool figure to be one of the directors of S.H.I.E.L.D. Part of you wants to trust him, but you don't. Again, the subtlety and the layers, like, this film is so good. We're building up to it now, but the elevator fight is one of the MCU's best action scenes because it's just, the scene speaks for itself. It's so good. Like, the build up to it where Steve is noticing that all the men have, like, things wrong with them, like one's sweating profusely, one is just constantly staring at him, and he's just like, something's not right. Then there's like the magnetic cuff that like stick him to the elevator, and he's like flipping around them, trying to like knock them out and stuff. Steve's lying before the fight starts. It's just so cold. It's just, there is so much aura behind it.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
I love the little exchange he has with Rumler, where Rumler's just like, oh, this isn't personal. And then he's like, but it kind of feels personal. So good.
I just want you to know, Cap, it's impersonal!
And then the shield flip to put it back on. So much aura, so much source.
It kind of feels personal.
Does that physics, even for a superhero thing, yeah, we'll let it slide. Because, like, he does, like, land on the shield and vibranium is supposed to, you know, take all the shock and absorb it, but you win this time, movie. You win this time. One thing I will say about Cap taking down this, like, plane, there is a lot of cuts. And that's what I was saying earlier about the filmmaking, is that it has aged a little bit. Like, this is very much a 2010s thing of, like, you know, action thrillers, like, have a lot of cuts and a lot of handheld cameras. And, like, it works, don't get me wrong, but there is just, like, a lot of cuts in this. It's almost jarring. It's not, but it gets very close. Like, you can tell what's going on. There's just a lot of cuts to tell you what's going on.
I was covering my engineer, so he shot him straight through me. Soviet slug, no rifling. Bye-bye bikinis.
Just want to point this out, but the story that Natasha tells Steve about the Winter Soldier sounds like a much cooler Black Widow film than the Black Widow film we got. Just pointing out the obvious.
Shut up and put your arm around me. Laugh at something I said. What? Do it.
I love the scene in the shopping mall where Steve and Natasha are trying to find out information, but they have to, like, blend in. Especially when the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents arrive, and then they have to, like, act like a couple, and then do all this, like, flirty stuff, and then they, like, kiss on the elevator. I love it. It's so much fun. But also, too, there's a nice balance of, like, it being fun, and also still adding to the tension. And one of the reasons why it's so much fun, and it's so great, is that it doesn't ruin the tone of the film. There is still a tension to the sequence. It's just that fun things are happening. Like, when Natasha tells Steve to kiss her because public displays of affection make people uncomfortable. Pretty realistic, pretty reasonable. It's a good cover.
I don't know, the truth is a matter of circumstance. It's not all things to all people, all the time. Neither am I.
The conversation that Steve and Natasha have in the car is so strong at elevating Black Widow's character from the previous installments, and also again increases their dynamic and their friendship. Although I will say that they're kind of like level above friends, and I like also too how this is the start of them like building an even stronger foundation to where like Steve doesn't trust her, but then throughout the rest of the film he learns to trust her, and she learns to trust him.
Rogers! I said fall in!
Now, the stuff in the army base I actually think is quite interesting, especially that kind of like lucid flashback we get of Steve like running and training, because I think one of the interesting thematic themes about Captain America, and that this scene kind of like indicates and highlights, is that Steve Rogers is still the same person, but he is also different. He's a man that has a strong set of principles and values, and technically refuses to change, but at the same time too, he is also changing because he now lives in a more modern, cynical era.
Rogers, Stephen. Born 1918.
This movie does something that the MCU recently has struggled, and that is trying to take the more fantastical, a bit crazy and weird characters from the comic books, like Arnim Zola, and making them fit within the circumstances of the MCU. Like, in the comic books, Arnim Zola is like a weird, like, mechanized android with, like, a face. But Arnim Zola in this film is a man that's kind of, like, stored all of his, like, memories in, like, databanks, and he's now, like, a face in a computer screen. That change works for me, because it still feels like it's in line with the character from the comic books, but at the same time, too, it stays within the grounded reality of the MCU. Because one of the things when it comes to comic book adaptations, and it's something that the MCU recently has kind of forgotten, is that you can change things to make it fit, but also at the same time too, you, the audience, have to believe in what you're seeing. Like, the reason why Arnim Zola works in this film than, say, MODOK does in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is that MODOK looks weird. The concept of that character is weird, but at the same time too, he's not as weird as he could be. Like, that film doesn't go all in on the MODOK design, but this film makes Zola feel realistic. Like, MODOK in Ant-Man 3 tries to be realistic by keeping in the actor's face, but at the same time too, it's like weird and warped, and it just looks weird and goofy. Like, there's a way to do big and silly comic book characters, and that is to either commit or make it feel realistic, and this film makes it more realistic, and it works for that. Again, look at the aura of the Winter Soldier, like the way he's lit here. So much sauce.
It was the other way around, and it was down to me to save your life, and you'd be honest with me. Would you trust me to do it?
I would now.
I love it. I love this scene. Like I said, it's them like coming to the realization of who each other are, but also too, it's a really strong scene for Natasha because it's her like learning to expand the group of people that she trusts, and her forming a proper strong connection with Steve. Like, no longer are they work colleagues, they are now friends, but they're more than friends. You know what I mean? And going back to my point earlier about how, you know, this film and the MCU in many ways used to modernize certain comic book things and make them feel more grounded and realistic, I like what they do with Falcon's costume in this. Obviously in his later appearances they give him more comic accurate colors and such, but to make the Falcon wingsuit, which in the comics, I don't actually know what Falcon's thing is. Like, does he actually have wings or is it a suit? But to make his actual suit wings is really cool. And I like the way they move too, is like, they're not just like rigid static wings, they like flap as he flies.
Bruce Banner, Stephen Strange, anyone who's a threat.
Okay, here's something. How is Stephen Strange a surgeon? How's he a threat? I feel like this is one of those like name drops where they put in to go, oh yeah, comic book fans recognize that name. But how is he a threat? Like, does the algorithm know that he's gonna become Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme? Well, he's not even the Sorcerer Supreme, but Master of the Mystic Arts? Does it know that he'll become a threat to Hydra or something? Sure, yeah, whatever. Oh, that yellow truck went past again. I guess, Punisher killed Sitwell. Just gonna say this now, the action scene on the highway as a set piece is like the best set piece in the film. I love it. It starts off strong and then it builds up to the Captain America versus Winter Soldier fight. And it's awesome. Oh god, the bit with the knife. Oh god, the bit with the knife gets me every time. Like the bit where the Winter Soldier just like has it and then uses his arm to like drive it into the truck and just miss Steve's head and then it like drags it across the truck. So good. Oh my god, this scene, this fight is so cool. And it all builds up to the moment where Steve finds out that the Winter Soldier is Bucky, and it's great. Thing is though, if I remember this correctly, they gave this away in the trailer, which is weird because why would you do that?
Bucky?
Who the hell is Bucky?
But regardless of that, in context of the film, even if you know that Bucky is the Winter Soldier, the reveal is excellent as foreshadowed by the scene in the Smithsonian. But also too now, the film kind of like kicks up a gear because it adds tension for Steve in the final act where, you know, he has to fight the Winter Soldier, but at the same time too, that's his oldest best friend. But then the Winter Soldier himself is not Bucky yet, and so he's on his mission ready to kill anyone that gets in his way. It's so good because then it all builds up to the bit. We'll get to it.
S.H.I.E.L.D, Hydra. It all goes.
Yeah, it all goes until we get to Age of Ultron, and then by the end of that film, hey, yeah, we rebuilt S.H.I.E.L.D. or something. We did or we didn't, because then we get to, like, the MCU, like, after Endgame, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is, like, not really a thing. It's, like, S.W.O.R.D. or so. To be fair, I didn't even watch Secret Invasion. I don't know what, like, where we're up to right now.
Oh, man. I am so fired.
Do you know what? This is one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos. It's just so small and just so simple. And do you know what? I miss them. I miss the Stan Lee cameos. Obviously, he's passed away and such, but like, I feel like there's a way to keep that tradition alive by like having his picture somewhere or just finding a way to like implement old footage or something. And I'm not saying like use deepfake AI technology to like reincorporate Stan Lee. I mean like just find like old archival footage of Stan Lee and put them on like a TV somewhere. Or do what they did in the Netflix Daredevil show where like his picture is just in the background.
The price of freedom is high. It always has been. And it's a price I'm willing to pay.
Okay, so funny thing about the speech is that everything Steve Rogers is saying is the truth. But the people at S.H.I.E.L.D., why would they assume that he's telling the truth? Is it just because he's Steve Rogers? Like, they just take his word as is. And like, yes, it's Captain America, but at the same time too, what if he went rogue? I mean, don't take that seriously. It's also just a silly nitpick because I love this speech. The whole price of freedom is high speech. Incredible. And fun little nerdy fact, when I was 14 years old and I saw this film in the cinema, I was like jokingly like saluting throughout this entire scene. I was like, yeah, that's Captain America.
Hey, Cap, how do we know the good guys from the bad guys? If they're shooting at you, they're bad.
Again, just simple, quick quips. Like, it's not like obtrusive like in Age of Ultron. It just works within this situation. It just like alleviates the tension just a little bit, but it doesn't break or ruin the scene. I love how this facial replacement technology has never come back in the MCU. Like, why would they not bring this back? Like, forget Skrulls. You can just do that. You don't have to go, oh yeah, it was a Skrull the whole time. You would have thought it was something that would have come back, but nope. Just a one and done thing, I guess. Again, the amount of source and aura the Winter Soldier has coming onto the screen, like him emerging through the fire as his like eerie like whining score kicks in, so good.
You need to keep both eyes open.
So good. It was so good. And Captain Marvel had to fucking ruin it. You know, just thinking about it, like, oh, did he lose it to a Skrull? Oh, did he lose it because someone's trying to like stab him in the eye? Nah, a fucking cat scratched him. I love this final fight between Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Like, it's filled with so much emotion, and there's also just like two clashing heads where like Captain America's like, I just gotta complete my mission, save everyone. But then Bucky's like, I've got to complete my mission and kill Captain America too. They're opposing like philosophies and ideologies in this fight because Cap's like, I'm not gonna kill him. That's Bucky. That's my best friend. But at the same time too, he isn't behaving like my best friend. And the moment where Steve is like trying to get the chip and then put it in, and then Bucky's like shooting him in all these places, like, it's filled with so much tension. Like, genuinely at the time, I thought Captain America was gonna die. That's how you know that, you know, as an audience member, you're invested in the story, because obviously he's not gonna die, but like, you're invested in the story. That's good directing. That's good storytelling.
An order only comes through pain. You ready for yours? Man, shut the hell up.
You know, the stuff they do setting up Rumlow becoming Crossbones is really good. And then when you get to Civil War, he's in it for like one scene and then blows up, and it's like, man, the MCU, they aren't good at handling villains.
Your name is James Buchanan Barnes. Shut up!
I love this whole scene. It's so good where Steve is just trying to convince Bucky to remember who he is. It's so powerful. It's so strong, especially when Cap is like,
Because I'm with you to the end of the line.
So powerful. And I love too to where like Bucky saves Captain America, but like he doesn't know why he did it. It's something that Civil War does quite effectively, to where like Bucky is slowly becoming himself again, but he isn't there yet. Like, he saves Steve, but he doesn't know why. He's researching himself, but at the same time too, none of it's coming to his memory. I love the Pulp Fiction reference on Nick Fury's grave. I think that's so much fun. Again, it's like a very subtle reference where like, it's tastefully done. Again, if this was a newer MCU film, they probably would have had Nick Fury actually say the passage out loud. You know what? That kiss on the cheek from Natasha, again, this is what I mean by how, like, they're not friends. They're more than friends, but also at the same time, too, they're not, like, romantically interested in each other. They're almost like kindred spirits or, like, soulmates in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. I really like Steve and Natasha's friendship, relationship, whatever.
When do we start?
One of the cool things that I like about Sam Wilson is how immediately he's just like, dude, Captain America needs my help. Like, yeah, of course I'm gonna go help him because that's my boy. Like, the instant loyalty, connection, and friendship they formed earlier on, I love that. I love how it kind of just builds into them essentially just being, like, best friends. You know, seeding up the idea that Captain America trusts him so much that he will make him Captain America in Endgame. Also, a cool little detail I love throughout this end credits is, like, the silhouette art. It just reminds me a lot of, like, the Alex Rider title covers. And obviously, it's probably, like, referencing or harkening back to some kind of, like, espionage thriller thing, but for me, it reminds me of Alex Rider. But that was Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Best Captain America film, and is one of the best superhero films ever made. You take away the fact that this film is a comic book film, and you just take it as a bare-bones spy, action, fantasy thriller, it's awesome. Again, I've pointed out my nitpicks with the film here and there, and there is something to do with the filmmaking that doesn't entirely gel with me. There is a little bit too much handheld camera work, and some of the edits aren't amazing, and they have aged a bit poorly, but overall though, it's great. I love this film. It's one of those MCU films that you don't have to really watch any of the previous films. You can just like sit down and watch it and take it as is, because just a great action spy thriller. And yeah, that's what I think of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. But what do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media, all the good stuff. Until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.